While often notorious for, at times, unrealistic rubbery-looking visuals, computer-generated imagery in movies has fooled many viewers into thinking what they were watching was real. But whether you can tell the difference or not, it's usually safe to assume that if it looks impossible, or highly dangerous, it was probably done using CGI. Or was it? Because some of the most iconic visual effects have actually been done without CGI, using practical effects and other camera trickery. So just to prove it to you, here are some amazing before and after visual effects that weren't CGI. Return of the Jedi. Before the age of CGI, George Lucas had to come up with various new techniques in order to translate his story to the big screen. But perhaps the one that nowadays you'd assume was CGI is the fight between Luke and Rancor. After initially trying to achieve the half-gorilla, half-potato look using 3 men in a suit, they decided that in the end it just didn't look convincing enough. So instead they went for a stick puppet that they filmed in many different ways, including reversed and even overcranked, in order to make the movement less like a puppet and more like the monster we know. And for the close-up shots of Luke, they just built a huge model of its hand. The Dark Knight. The car chase where the Joker's trying to chase down Harvey Dent is pretty impressive. In fact, it looked unbelievably impressive. And what's even more impressive is that its two most iconic moments were done mostly without CGI. The part where the Batmobile upends a garbage truck was actually done using third-scale models. And the massive stunt where the Joker's truck flips over was actually done with a remote-controlled piston in a closed-off street. Independence Day, 1996. Independence Day is a brilliant example of well-used practical effects. Like, for example, the wall of fire that travelled down the streets of New York. This was done by filming a model on its side and rotating it afterwards. But perhaps the most iconic visual effect in this movie that nowadays you would have thought had to have been CGI is when the White House gets destroyed. This was done using a 10 by 5 foot model and then blowing it up with 40 explosive charges. Gravity. Okay, yes, this movie's full of CGI. But one element that wasn't CGI was the light on the actors' faces. Now this may seem like a minute detail, but it was actually something that was crucial to making the actors' faces match the lighting of the CGI background. The actors were filmed with LED screens all around them, with the CGI images playing in time with the scene. This meant that the reflections on their faces synced perfectly with the CGI images. Interstellar. Known for its sparse usage of CGI, compared with many modern-day movies, Interstellar was packed full of stunning, realistic visuals. Miniature and full-scale models were used for shots of the spacecraft. And because Christopher Nolan feels that filming in front of a green screen is depressing, many of the scenes were filmed on location and on huge sets constructed for the movie. And when Cooper ventures into the black hole and is able to communicate with his daughter, that was actually Matthew McConaughey hanging from a harness on a real set that they had built specifically for the scene. The Matrix. The famous bullet time effect where the cameraman runs around the subject as fast as he can in order to capture the action wasn't how it was done. Nor was it done with a computer-generated version of the actor placed in a 3D environment. Nope, in order to be able to do this scene they actually came up with a new technique, one that they now call bullet time. This involved placing cameras all around the subject that were all timed to go off one after the other a fraction of a second apart. Not only did this allow them to go around the subject while the action was happening, but it also allowed them to capture it in slow motion. Very cool. Speed. The stunt where the bus jumps the incomplete highway was actually done for real. They just made a ramp and had a stunt guy with a shock-absorbing harness drive over it. The bus, however, did travel further than initially planned and broke one of the cameras. But aside from using CGI to make the gap in the road, this was all real. Skyfall. You'd think that crashing a train through a tube station's ceiling would call for the usage of some pretty heavy CGI, not only to be cost-effective, but for safety reasons. But in spite of all of this, they still did it for real, dropping 2 replica train carriages that weighed around 5 to 7 tons off a track 20 feet above the Pinewood Studios set. There were digital enhancements added in post, but the majority of the scene was done using practical effects. Which one of these effects did you originally think was CGI? Let us know in the comments below.